Welcome. I'm back with Kate and Adam, and it's another episode of Epiphenomenalism here. So let's talk about what kind of projections we can make on the world that will be not only but epic, but a little bit revealing. So I'd like to maybe start off with the COVID reality. Now, this is a bit of a curve. You guys didn't know about this. But I'm going to bring in. No, never had any clue. Keeping you on your toes, right? This is the thing, right? It's the thinkers. They don't know what's to come next, right? So,
not people.
Yeah. So, okay. The primer is COVID. So I'll let you distill that for a minute, right? So you're running COVID in your head and this type of thing, and I would like to know from you guys at what point would a lab leak hypothesis be viable for you in terms of something realistic? You would accept it. At what point have you heard of? First of all, have you heard of anything? Have you heard of lab leak hypothesis?
That's the theory that it was actually accidentally or intentionally leaked from the research lab in Wuhan.
Yeah, exactly. Adam, you're on board with that concept?
Yeah, I have heard that. Didn't give much weight, but I'm intrigued with the explore a little bit.
Like where this is going?
You know, what would make me? Yeah.
Because Adam, we've seen a number of companies have issues because they didn't follow process. Right? So the concept of a process not being followed in a research lab and having consequences is not something that is beyond our, I would say, experience as far as like people either with the best intentions skip steps or, you know, whatever, and it can lead to significant consequences.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess you're going to say, well, what theme are we going to talk about with this? And the first I wanted to hit it head on with this idea of conspiracy theories, right? So, no, but I do. I have this idea that I'm above that sort of thing, that I can detect these kinds of things early on, and I'm one of those people that stays really clear from conspiracy theories. If they're labeled conspiracy theories, then I want nothing to do with them because there's no validity to them. They're unfounded. Right. There's no evidence. There's, basically a lot of conjecture, and it really sounds good from a B-rated movie star, saying something like, it's the government, man, sort of thing, right?
Well, I guess at this point, they're all conspiracy theories because they haven't validated anything and they haven't done a root cause assessment to say this is what stemmed the COVID outbreak. So every theory is a conspiracy theory at this point. Right.
Now, are we pulling you along, Adam, a little bit, or you're still wading just with your tiptoe into this water here?
No, three things come to mind with conspiracy theories. The first is, whenever there's a lack of trust in governing bodies or people are feeling out of control, then there's a rise in things like flat earth and anti-vax and all this horseshit like that, right? It has nothing to do with whether or not people actually believe that, although that might be what they're focused on in the middle. And at the moment, it has more really to do with a lack of trust in what people are telling them in big organizations. So they try and control what you can focus on. In this case, it's this global conspiracy type thing. And, the next thing is, and I see this in memes sometimes and I love it, where it's like, I gotta love the optimism of conspiracy theorists. Like, have you ever tried to organize like 3 people to show up in a stream at the right time? Like, if you think you can organize hundreds of thousands of people to keep a secret and work behind the scenes in this shadow, or then, I appreciate your optimism that that is even possible. You've clearly never tried to project manage anything in your life. So, That's where my head goes.
Yeah. So do I. The complexity of somebody putting it together, I think it's, we're not in so many aspects, we're not the receivers of a master puppeteer that's pulling our strings. And anytime I kind of hear that, I think that that's kind of goofiness, right? Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's where the skepticism lies. Are you in a similar kind of position, Kate?
Yeah, I guess so. I always like to question. I mean, I've always challenged authority, starting at a very young age when I used to park in my principal's parking spot. And like, I would always like to push those kind of boundaries to see. Yes, but yeah, I don't think Adam knew that. So, and I would like to push the boundaries a little bit of what, but I always question. Like, I never just took things for face value. And I mean, that kind of came across a lot of times when working for companies as a little bit abrasive, I think. And so, but that's just who I am. I'm not going to just take something because somebody says it as face value. I want to hear all the stories. I want to kind of deduce stuff for myself, which, I think we stopped doing a lot of that. We just read the headline 9 times out of 10. We don't even read the body of the information, and we make a judgment and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess where I wanted to take this is that this is the kind of thing that resembles people and bodies and institutions that have something at stake, right? Yeah. So it seems that so much more is at stake with a blunder like this, but the narrative that I've heard around this conversation is that the institution wants to protect itself from any unwanted or negative news, right? And my next point would be that corporations function in a very similar way. And I have a guess that the institutions and the rise of the socially correct, the politically correct, actually emerged from administrators wanting to be able to say, hey, we just should be careful with our language out of respect for people's either feelings or our bottom line, or for some sort of reason, we want to self-censor ourselves, right? The perversion that we're now experiencing is that, let's just say it was something in a lab situation that requires funding, that requires a strong acknowledgement of their institution as being experts in their field. If they blunder something so huge, the last thing you want to do is have this become, as we've seen in the movies, like a political or media nightmare, right? And so this sense of damage control comes in. We'll take a conventional sort of media outlet or just say a corporation, and that corporation is going to say to all their staff, say, look, you don't say anything, don't say a word, you're on a gag order because this is going to affect our company. Leave it to our PR person, sort of thing. So I think it's a culture where we're scared because, in our call-out culture, it's something that can have real devastating effects. And, you guys understand this more than anything as business consultants. How do you navigate such a minefield? What's the right thing to do in these cases?
That's a juicy one.
That's a tough question. Yeah.
I think it comes down to trust, right? And we see this a lot when we talk with companies, big or small. Like, okay, well, you trust your people, right? A simple example is people working from home versus not working from home, right? Do you trust that happy and productive and making you money working at home, or do you need to see them and be beside them in the office, right? You know, social media is another example, like you said. Do you trust your people to go on and talk about your company on their social media profiles, which would benefit you, but you've given up some control a little bit? And where are you comfortable in that realm, and kind of where are the no play zones, and where are the, you know, where do those risks lie? And I think, you know, it's sometimes hard to take a real, you know, objective to that, because you're gonna have your own biases built into that. Right? You know, I argue with my dad all the time about working from home, COVID, virtual work. Like, yeah, it works fine, it works great. You do it every day. And he's like, no way, you have to be in the office, all this type of stuff. So, yeah, I think the answer is it's messy. It's not a clean cut. I don't know. What do you think, Caitlin?
Yeah, you know, like trust is so important, and you touched on a few things there. Like, we're unpacking so much in this, Dan. Like, as far as, you know, what do you do? Like, it's not usually a huge blunder that leads to these things. It's usually a series of small failures that would, you know, that led to a huge catastrophe that individually you wouldn't even look at a second time. But it's like finding your way through the Swiss cheese, right? And then kaboom, it happens. So like, that's typically what we see and why these things happen. But as far as reputation and brand goes, which is what you're talking about, that's huge. That's huge right now. Brand awareness, because it can go like that, right? And Adam's right. It's about trust. And it's about, you know, trusting that the company will stand up and do the right thing, or the government, right? And it's not just a matter of like, we can't always be perfect, but like, trust that I'm going to, you know, be open to growing and doing the right thing, and that I'll always try to do the right thing. And that I think is a bigger thing, is that, you know, we get into like personal brand, company brand, and we see so much happening there. But if we can trust that people, like, give people the ability to fail and learn, and not condemn them, but be able to say, I want to do the right thing and I'm going to do the right thing. I think that's a huge step that we need to take, right? Because right now we're in this condemning phase. We want to point a finger, we want to condemn, and we want that to be that. You're labeled, you're done, it's over. But that's not how we grow as a society, as companies, as individuals, right? I mean, I wouldn't want to be condemned for something I did when I was younger and foolish, right? I want people to trust that deep down I will grow and be open, right?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I bring this, it's a hard one to navigate, but I mean, I think I was unfairly pushing a button last episode where I said, you know, what basically one of the aspects I was trying to push is what makes goodness good for business, basically, right? And what this tells me is that the you know, the public is the arbiter in this sort of process, is that even though they've got their failings, and we may be overemphasizing and compensating towards a call out culture, which our critical minds are really easy to point out, ultimately the mechanism behind that call out culture is to find something good. They're trying to flush out, you know, the negativity, the bad from descending on us, right? And people are tired of having stuff forced down their throats. So where I was going with this, and I think it's essential and core to the ethos that is, you know, your guys' company, is that doing the right thing is actually good for business, right? Yeah. And that's what the focus is. And so this should transform in terms of everything that we say, the messages that we communicate. And Adam pointed it out. It comes down to trust. It kind of sounds cliche if you base a PowerPoint around that, but the idea, it's true, right? And so the thing is that you're trying to say, how do I, you know, show up? And this is language I learned from Brene Brown. But you show up with some vulnerability, explain and show and be transparent with the way you're approaching this, And if you're authentic out of the gate, if you're trying your best, and that's something that people can see, and it's whether or not you're an expert in your field or you're not, you can't be afraid to make mistakes, right? And I think if you're transparent with that and you get better at using language in a way that explains that, you won't get caught up in this weave of lies or political correctness that can sometimes really, really work against you.
There's a crux there. What you said though, Dan, is you have to be essentially willing to display all that, right? And the transparency. Like, take oil and gas, for example, super bad rap. And all the people against it are very public about their position, right? The fact of the matter is, as at least I can, in Canada, the oil and gas industry is heavily regulated. They're doing so many amazing things to advance, the environmental mitigations and taking it to the next level and looking at eco-friendly solutions and green energy, but they don't talk about it. They're not out there promoting it. And so you've got this opposition that's very visible. And so it really comes down to, you can be doing all the right things, right? Like our Canadian oil and gas industry is doing so many right things. They have these amazing programs and they're doing the right things, but they're not promoting it. And so it's a very weighted perception of the industry. And so that's where it gets really complicated, because it's not now it's not just like, are you doing the right things, but you actually have to promote that you're doing the right things in order for people to have that perception of you.
And it's very complicated because, as we know, a media can be biased as a whole, right? And so, I mean, we saw this in a Trump election, right? I mean, whether you like Trump or not, you could definitely see that the media really was sick of him, right? They're like, we don't want him, and so
this is really interesting, right? Sorry, did I freeze there?
You're good.
Okay, so you talk about Brene Brown, right? And we're talking about leadership and Simon Sinek and all this kind of stuff, and we're asking people to be vulnerable at work to each other. We're asking people to take a risk and open themselves up for judgment by being honest, and this is how the best teams work together, and blah blah blah. But if you extrapolate that to like a business, to media, how come businesses aren't willing to take the same step? Now, granted, they should be smart about it in terms of like legal and financial business, but like, you're asking the individual to do it, but then you get a bunch of individuals together and you call it a business, and then they're saying, no, we're not making ourselves vulnerable. Then why that dichotomy? I think businesses with this mindset underestimate people's ability to handle bad news, right? We're not all going to lose our crap. If the lockdown's probably going to be 3 months, right? I would rather hear that personally than some horseshit about 2 weeks and then 2 weeks again and 2 weeks again. Yeah. Or transparency, right? Hey, this is what we're thinking about. We're worried about numbers are telling. We've been talking about this. We've got some health concerns about this and the other. Just underestimate that people aren't going to freak out in the way you are. Close the doors, you shut them until you have the official statement, and then you read it. I don't understand why you made that decision. Right?
Yeah.
Now I'm obviously biased because I'm coming from my level of, say, education and the people that I interact with and blah blah blah. But I've seen it in corporations too, right? Like with layoffs and stuff. Like all the way up until the minute the layoffs start. No, there's not going to be any layoffs. Absolutely not. It would never happen here. We're good. Our competitors, they're in trouble, but not us, right? So
except for now.
I got a perfect analogy for this. I got a perfect philosophical analogy to pull it all together, because I wrote an article about this a couple of years ago, And if
no
there's
way.
a star called Betelgeuse, right? So it's the one star that I think is fairly close to Canada, or to get to Canada, to Earth. Okay, and so the light level from Betelgeuse has actually been going down noticeably, right? And so, anyways, I was fantasizing about this, to think, well, what if the actual star had actually gone supernova, and that's what we're seeing, right? And we're going to see the blast. Well, we wouldn't see the blast. We would just be vaporized, right? I guess, if that was the case. But the idea is something like this. If the top scientists, let's say people that were privy to this information, and bring in the conspiracy theory again, but this one's playful. This is just the ethical thing. What do you do, right? Because it presupposes the conspiracy theory. It says that if there's a meteorite headed towards Earth, or a supernova that's going to obliterate every living creature on Earth, and there's 7 people in a room, they're scientists, right? They know this is going to happen. They have this information. Is it ethically right to let the world know about it? And what would the world do in a pandemonium like state to say, guys, you got 1 week left? By the way, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing anybody can do. You have a week left. Would you say it to the world?
This is your train track problem.
This is another train track, yes.
Yeah.
Intergalactic,
right?
intergalactic A or B.
Yeah. There's someone tied to the tracks in front of you. There's a switch where you can switch onto a different track, and you probably know this, Stanley. And then there's 4 people on the other track. So what is the morally right thing to do? The person dies, or do you switch the track, save that person, but kill those people? So is it right to do nothing, or are you morally act regardless of the consequences? So in this case, do you do nothing? Is that right? Or do you tell the world and watch the world self-implode for a week before the supernova arrives?
So you notice how Kate, so Adam and Daniel have kind of philosophically ganged up on Kate, because she's now got 2 conundrums to really sort of figure out, that not even philosophers can figure out. We're bearing down on Kate to say, okay, now Kate, it's your turn to tell us the answer. Or her other choice is to come back with another philosophical question that just pushes it into like a circle of like, oh yeah, well, I've got a conundrum of my own. Okay, go Kate, it's your turn.
Well, that's hard. Okay, so 2 separate things, I guess, is the difference here. As the train conductor, I have to witness the consequences for the rest of my life. With the supernova, I'm in the same boat as everybody else, and it's all over in 7 days no matter what. So does the 7 days make a difference? If we cannot change it, does 7 days make a difference? Does it really matter which choice we make? If it's all over in 7 days, it's all over in 7 days. Whether we spend it oblivious or in pandemonium, or finally showing each other the love and respect that we deserve in our last 7 days, the end result in 7 days is the same. Versus the train track one, which is a bit more of a conundrum, because it's what you have to live with. In the supernova one, I'm not living at the end of it, right? And then, that gets into a whole nother philosophical afterlife discussion, which we're happy to go into if you want. But at the train track, it's can you live with yourself?
Yeah. I always think it interesting. I want to bring up afterlife here as well. But what's that, Adam?
I said, so the conundrum is judgment. Do you judge yourself? How do others judge you? If there's no time, I don't have time to judge myself. I don't care. That's... and that's like The Purge. if the movie The Purge, right? If I don't care, then what might I do? I don't know. This is a crazy question. I think this is why it's such a... People debate this forever.
Yeah, I always like to bring up the trolley question with replacing that single individual with a loved one, right? Like if my son was strapped to that train track, then obviously I wouldn't do that. And I'm just acknowledging the fact that he's my biology, and we can actually kind of defer to like a kin bias of sorts, because like there's no way I could steer it towards my son. There's just absolutely no way I could do that. Even if there was 4 people on the other side, I could never do that. It's not in my biology to do that.
Right.
And I think that there is a difference between like who those 4 people are and who that single person is, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, you can't make it
at least from a kin standpoint, right? Like there's just, I'm there to acknowledge that my biology just would not allow me to do that.
It's the Matrix Reloaded, right? Love is the answer to everything, right? Neo chooses to sacrifice Zion in order to save Trinity, right? And then that changes everything. So, like, you're right. You personalize the experience, and we will choose our personal kin or friends or whatever every time. We have to. We're wired to care for each other that way, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Kate, you wanted to go into the afterlife. I'm interested how do you either pull us up or down into those worlds?
Oh my gosh, that's like we're getting into some tricky stuff there. I mean, everybody's belief in the afterlife is different, and I guess there's the best part about this is tell me I'm wrong. Like no one can tell you, right? And so I definitely believe that I think that I think we're here to learn, and I think we're here to grow as like spiritually and gain more every lifetime. So that's my personal belief, and that if you don't learn the lessons that you need to learn to grow and to become a deeper spiritual being, you're gonna do it again. So that's my philosophy. That's personal. That's just what I have lived by. But that's everybody believes something different.
So hell is more like a perpetual Groundhog Day of repeating ethical, issues again and again and again. The person's in a rut; they just can never, transcend the improvement that is offered to them every day. I mean, in that case, you're looking. There's a choice that you can look at these things and try and transcend them and move to, a state of improvement. You can learn, or you can refuse to learn, and that's very interesting. Yeah, I like that. What about you, Adam?
I love the notion. I was highly entertained about TV shows where you go to the afterlife and it's like a business, right? It's like going to the DMV. They like check you in and they're like stamping, like, right? You like check in, you go to the library, and it's just like it's like grand affair. It's just like it's basically like the exact same thing we've got with the exact same weaknesses and all this kind of stuff. But that's if you're talking like, how do you change something like that? How do you change a system that just runs like that, like I'm talking about, right? Whether it's the afterlife or it's a big corporation of people or it's a government or whatever, but like how do you change a system that runs and everybody just like a part of it? This stuff is so scary for organizations. A pandemic comes in overnight and all of a sudden everyone's got to work from home. The whole thing's like exploded in your face. How do you react to that? What do you do? Yeah. I don't know.
Let me see if I can pull this together, and because I know what Adam was really nicely doing is to try and pull it back to organizations. And so here's the idea. Could you salvage this at all if you guys said, okay, the plan is to talk to XYZ Acme Corporation, and our first our first ENTA initiative is to sit down with the team, the management team, and pitch them on our idea. And our idea is this: is that we're going to interview your staff, from the bottom to the top, and we're going to talk about the afterlife. How do you salvage that? Like, okay, so you got to say that this is something that somehow will bind us all, right, together, right? So can you see that there's any kind of conversation that could cohesively bring people together and having such a weird conversation?
I think that's a tough one.
Or you would just stay away from it. We'd be like, guys, this has nothing to do with business. We would not even go into that realm.
No, okay, that's a really hard thing to say, that it has nothing to do with business. People's beliefs define the decisions they make, and businesses are made of people. So you can't just say, oh, it has nothing to do with business. Like, it's not really a business topic. Religion, beliefs, afterlife, you kind of steer away from that, because people have to be able to be mature enough to hold opposing views in tension and still want to work together. And that's a hard thing to learn how to do. But does it have nothing to do with business? No, like, my beliefs make up who I am, and they make the decisions I make in life. And I apply those decisions even when I'm working for my business. So, it's hard to say that it has nothing to do with it. We're all made up of our beliefs.
Yeah. So there again. So Adam, I'm saying
this earlier, Dan. You said this earlier, Dan, when you said, what does it mean for to make the right choice? Not right. Now we're getting into that, like, consequences or afterlife aside. When do you make a choice, and how do you know what that is? Like, sometimes it's hard to tell, right? Do you somebody that you care about that it's like the smell question at work, right? That person that smells work, who's going to tell them? Right? They would probably appreciate being told. Everyone else would appreciate it, but somebody's got to like, hey, you might hate me forever, but you need to shower more, whatever, right? We find very convenient ways of shying away from those types of truths, right? We're all about doing the right thing when it's convenient and easy, but when we hit a hard one, all of a sudden, oh, hey, that file hasn't been filed, I'm going to go do it, right? I'm going to avoid it at all costs, and we do that in personal lives, at work, all over the place, right? We avoid, and by avoiding that, we're just planting more mines,
Well, and the fact of the matter is it's never a choice between right and wrong. It's always a choice between opinion of what was the most right? And that's where it's complicated. In business, if it was a choice between right and wrong, people would want to make the right choice, but it's not. We operate in the series of gray, where there's so many contributing factors and stakeholders when we're making decisions as leaders, right? Mm-hmm. You've got your employee stakeholders, you have the public stakeholders, you have your board of directors stakeholders, and all of them have different perspectives of success and what is right. And now you're trying to please everybody. So it's never a simple matter of like, oh, I do the right decision. It's never black and white like that. And that's where it gets complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point. Very good point.
I think we hit the
what about a company that were to Adam, you got the floor, bud.
So I'm keeping interrupting. All right. So I think, Kaylin, you hit it right there when you talk about it's not right or wrong. It's what you feel is right or wrong based on the information you have, right? And I love looking at this. We're all arguing, government responses. Do we shut down? Do we not shut down? Do we do this? Do we do that thing? So we're all judging, the government decisions, and they're not helping by not being very transparent. We have this whole world of stakeholder influences that's going on up here that we know nothing about. So yeah, from our point of view or our information, we might be frustrated that they closed schools. That seems like the craziest thing to do. Why would they do that? Yet up here, more information and stuff happening. So, that's the trick, right? If you were in the person's shoes, would you make the same decision based information that you had? I don't know, maybe. I think we too often project this simplification when we're thinking about other people or other bodies or whatever, that they're sitting around a table coming up with stupid ideas and then they tell these things and, I'm surrounded by idiots, right? I'm the only one that's really thinking this through, me on my house on the block, right? Yeah. My soapbox on that one.
No, I think you guys are both right. These are very complicated issues, and the point is to say, what do you self-censor? And the emphasis and the wisdom that you guys are putting forward is that transparency is the new public policy, right? And so the art of persuasion, in philosophical terms, use the word rhetoric, which has a bad pejorative to it, but the art of rhetoric in this case is to be as transparent as possible, but to show a maximal amount of leadership in what you say and project the values of your company fairly, right? So, yeah, we're not afraid to move things forward. We're not afraid to make mistakes. From a maximal transparency sort of standpoint, these are kind of the things that we're working with. This is the information that I'm dealing with, and here's how I'd like to proceed, kind of thing. And
that's exactly it, Dan. And one of the things we've done for some of our clients is help them build a decision-making tool where they say, like, these are our values, this is our vision of where we want to go, and these are our, close objectives over the next year, couple of years, right? And so when we make a decision that's going to affect our company, does it align with our values? Does it get us towards our vision? And is it going to help us achieve the objectives that we've set out? And if you have transparency in that decision-making process, you can say no even to the right proposals, right? Because it's not a matter of this isn't the right thing to do. It might not be the right thing to do right now, right? And so we've built a system that does that, where we say, okay, show your decision making, and you can say, yeah, we love the idea that you're coming to the table with. It is the right thing. It matches all of our core values, but you know what? This idea is going to get us to our vision faster, and that's why we picked it. Not that your idea was wrong, right? Versus saying to somebody who comes up with an idea, no, we're not going to do that. There's a difference. And then that person now becomes disengaged, and they're not going to come to you with their next amazing idea. Right? But if you say to them, that's a great idea, here's why we didn't pick it to execute on right away. This is the decision-making process. That's the kind of transparency that keeps people engaged in a company, but allows you to say, I stand by my decision, right? And if you have a systematic way of throwing ideas against all of that, or even as a leadership group, if you make that so clear, you're actually teaching people to make decisions in a systematic way that would hopefully on a regular basis be the right decision. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a big proponent on that too, because as self-starters with, Adam and Kate, we're all in some degree running a small business, whether it's a consulting firm or, in my case, a media outlet. And you can only be in one place at one particular time. And when people bring me ideas, I can quickly assess the ideas and how they flush out in the system. I can give them honest feedback, and I can try and I'm like the underdog. I root for people to try and have their ideas rise, right? I want to see these ideas rise up. But invariably what happens is that I will default to a structure of autonomy, giving somebody the autonomy to be able to take it to the next level, so that either the shortcomings or the issues that invariably happen in any kind of state of entropy start to become, very visible to them. And so if they're the one with the idea, realize that developing an idea is something that is very complex in many cases. And so if they are like birthing the idea, so to speak, they need to take, ownership to nurturing it and understand how all the work that it takes to actually bring that through. And so I want to empower people who who bring ideas to be able to take those projects and then run them, from a beginning to end sort of scenario, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think it humanizes the leadership a little bit, right? And I'll give you an example. I worked for an organization about 400 people. CEO, everyone looks to the CEO as kind of like God, right? Like you on a pedestal. They're so, so first thing he does is he drops all these F-bombs like in front of the whole company about the weather, about this, that, and the other, and it immediately humanizes him and connects you with, because you're like, oh, he's not this clandestine strategist that's in control of all our lives. He's just another guy that happened to be, here he is, right? And if you open your decision making process and you invite people in and you kind of show them that, yeah, like we've got some experience, being on this leadership team of a large organization, let's say, but really we're just a bunch of people trying to figure it out just like everyone else, and half the time we're just going, you know what, screw it, try it, I don't know, we'll see what happens. And it's not this like perfect strategy that's clandestine ordained for the whole year. It's a crapshoot just like anywhere else, but you're making the best decisions you can and you're reacting hopefully quickly and kind of using that a little bit and this, that, and the other and the others. But if you can show that you're human, right? Then I'm like, oh, okay, I like that guy. He's trying. He thought about it. He's doing as best he can or she can, and we're all just people at the end of the day, and that's that. Right? So.
Yeah, and I think what happens in that situation, let's say that there's two kinds of people that respond. There's the kind of people that say, oh, that's great, and I've got a ton of ideas that I want to put forth to management, right? This is one archetype sort of a person. And another one, the other person is like, look, I've got my hands full. I'm trying to run my household, and there's a ton of things that I'm thinking about. I really don't have any innovative ideas that I want to bring related to the, to the problems that, management is facing. I just think they're doing a great job. I think they're very qualified people, and the transparency is just a plus for me. I'm just going to do my job, and the duties that are assigned to me. I'm just going to do them very well because I know I've got a very competent leadership team behind me, right? So they're there for a particular reason. So I would imagine, and let me know if you think this is the case, but there's a mixture in organizations of people that are initiative seekers, and then there's people that are more just like, I like to put my head down and just do things, like just tell me what you want me to do. You're the leader. I trust you.
100%. And I think this is where you kind of have to consider that people are people at these work units, right? And because people will change as they go through their lives. They might be going through kids or a move or something tough that's like draining their energy, because creativity and innovation takes energy. It takes like excitement. It takes an extra bit of oomph, right? So not everyone's going to have that all the time in stages of lives. That's why it's important to kind of know what's going on. How are you? These types of things. And yeah, 100%. We call them champions, right? This is what we do when we go in an organization. We look for them. We try and find the people that are like thinking about stuff. It bothers them that this works like this. They would rather see it better, and they would love to kind of, if not take charge of the initiative, but like tell somebody who will, right? So you're right. There are definitely certain personality types that just gravitate toward that, and hopefully they're working in a place that welcomes this input. Versus, there are some people who would rather just be left alone do their job. That's totally cool. You need both, right?
So when you guys engage with a company, do you actually conduct interviews with the staff and say, hi, I'm Kate, I'm Adam, and what irks you? What do you want to do? What's the ideas? And do you kind of field those and get a feel for the sentiment and psychology of the people involved in the company? Is that part of what you guys do?
Yeah, we when we go to do a business evaluation where we actually look at the maturity of a business, in all of their processes and systems to say, okay, here's where there's some big wins, quick wins, potential risks, that kind of stuff. When we do a business evaluation, the full business evaluation includes discussions with leadership and with the team to talk about those things, right? Because it's really always interesting to see the perception that leadership has and the perception that the team has. Yeah. Right. And so that's actually a really good comparison, because you want to talk about, it's not just a matter of like, are these systems established, but are they implemented, and are the people also bought into them, right? Because that's a huge thing. Because you're talking about, are your people turned on? Are they engaged, right? Are they excited to plug in every day? Or are they begrudgingly doing the process despite the fact that, it's irking them every day? Because you're losing so much potential out of that employee who's not pumped about doing their job, right? So yeah, that's absolutely part of our business evaluation.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, do you offer like an
ultimately we're looking for unity within the business, right? Say a process, it doesn't have to mean that it's formally written down and mapped out. It just means that a bunch of people know what to do when this happens. And to be honest, half the time it is informal. That's great. Don't mess with it if it's not broken, right? But sometimes when you draw it on the board, you have ideas. So that's kind of over there to kind of facilitate the humanity of how people are working together. And, if there's a way to kind of take something that's really complicated and simplify it, then great, let's do that. But I think that's why Caitlin and I love kind of the smaller, medium businesses, because we can interview a large portion of the business, right? We can talk to people. We can get a sense of what's going on, right? A lot of the time we get pulled into these coaching discussions where there's like passive aggressiveness or like leadership issues or stuff going on, right? And we're kind of come out of that an hour talking to the person and they complained about their boss. They didn't really tell. So what do I do with that now? What do I do with that to help them work better together and their business make more money, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, but we love that stuff because we connect with people. We get to meet them. We want to hear their stories. That's what it is at the end of the day. Right?
Well, in that case, what do you do with somebody that just complains about their boss? Like, what is a possible recommendation? Not like it's not a one fit, one thing fits all. But what are some possible recommendations if somebody there's a group of people that consistently are kind of irked about that authority figure that's running the department? How do you handle that? What's your recommendation as outsiders that are coming in? And
9 times out of 10, it's a miscommunication between two people. Like, it's a perception, something, right? And if they don't have all the information, like we talked about trust, and we talked about being able to trust the person to make the decision with the information that they have, right? But that other person doesn't have all the same information, right? So it's a perception issue. And a lot of times it's a matter of maybe now it's a point to map this process out and talk about the process together so that you can see the same information, what information is coming in, what information needs to go out, and then you can map it out. Other times it's a personality thing. And we work with business coaches and groups that will pull in if it's a personality thing, right? If it's okay, you guys just aren't clicking, but a lot of times it really is a miscommunication of information. And that's when it might be time to like, okay, this has been an informal process. It's time to formalize this so that we can have a clear picture. And that often clarifies things. They see the complexity in each other's roles and why those things are happening. So it's not just a matter of throwing something over the fence to somebody, but you understand why, the struggle's happening. So So sometimes it's a personality thing, and sometimes it's a process thing, and that's when it's time to get clarity.
That's a good point, Kate. I think that's really good. It does resonate with me to add some structure and some clarification. If it's barbarous, then it's something that needs a little bit more structure and guidelines, or some rules in place, right? Of expectations and processes. I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I'm not the expert in it, but that seemed very appropriate to me.
Adam, would you add anything to that?
I just, sometimes the squeaky wheel just wants to be listened to and no one's asked them. And I ask these people, listen to them. Sometimes they'll, tell you a lot. Other times they'll ask them, invite them, make them feel heard, make them feel part of the process. A lot of times that kind of fixes itself, right? There's obviously more complex pieces to it. Are there leadership training opportunities, or as Kaylin said, we kind of bring in some coaches to help the group dynamics or whatever. But that's usually a really good place to start, is just close your mouth and listen.
Yeah, I think businesses sometimes get a bum rap in terms of all the things that they're responsible for. It's tough to run a business. It's tough to beat a bottom line and produce profit and be responsible for people's lives in terms of their livelihoods. And it's a tough challenge for management, right? A tremendous amount of stress, and it's not an envious position for people that are running huge corporations, right? It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and it's never black and white. It's never easy.
I think at the end of the day, if you can just admit that people are trying to do their best and believe that, then that's a huge step at the end of the day, right? The rest we can figure out what's going on. As long as you and I believe that both of us are showing up here to do the best we can, that's all everybody wants. That's all everybody does. And if it's not showing up here, it's because there's something else over here sucking energy out of me, right? So,
but it's so interesting, Adam, and the more removed you are, the easier it is to assume that somebody has ill intentions. Like, think about your commuter when you drive and somebody cuts you off. Like, you automatically think that person's out to get me. Oh my gosh, he did it on purpose. He's just being rude. Like, there's no understanding that person might have their entire other worlds going on, right? We just don't. The more removed it's funny, you put a car window there and all of a sudden it's not a person anymore. And you treat that person like completely different. So the more removed you are from connecting with that person, the more likely we assume that they're not doing the right thing, which is bizarre, because that's not the perception of ourselves, right? We would always give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. Well, this is why I did that. I'm trying to do the right thing. Well, so is everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? There's a small population out there, like less than 5% of people who are actually trying to do harm.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
there's not a lot of benevolent actors, or most people have right motivations. I would expect, and so your company in general just tries to leverage that foundation and say, how do we maximize what's already good?
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, totally.
That's a whole nother conversation, but maybe we unpack that one for next time. I feel like there's a layer there we could really get into. But
like, what is goodness, and these types of things, and what does it mean to an organization? And okay, well, I'm making mental notes. Maybe that's what we should focus on our next episode.
Okay.
Yeah. In summary, is there anything you guys wanted to say to the audience, or in summary of our wide sort of meandering sort of conversation that we had, starting with COVID and ending in goodness. I mean, wow, how did we navigate that? We somehow arrived here.
I think the basis of it was trust, right? We talked about, the conspiracy, and Adam said whenever conspiracies don't come up, it has to do with trust. And then that whole trust and and brand awareness and perception, it's all trust based, right? But how do you build that? Building trust takes time, but it also, if you've ever read Steve Covey's book, The Speed of Trust, it's huge. It's worth building trust over because it's going to come back to you in time and money 100 times over. So transparency, authenticity, right? And there's a whole bunch of things, competency that comes into building trust. But at the end of the day, that's where I think this all ties into. You talk about decision-making, you talk about your company and perception, it's all trust-based. So finding a way to build trust both internally and externally,
it's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah. Agreed, guys. Well, on that note, I think we should maybe leave it. And you guys are awesome as always, Epic. And that's the end of the Epiphenomenal broadcast this week.
Thank you, Dan.
You bet. Bye.